You ever hear the word rhetoric thrown around? Yeah, usually when we're talking about politics, right? Well, what if I told you that the real story of rhetoric is way more interesting and, frankly, more important than you've been led to believe?
I mean, we've all heard it. Someone says something like, oh, that's just a bunch of political rhetoric, and you can almost hear the eye roll, can't you? It's our go-to phrase for talk that sounds manipulative, empty, just words with no real substance.
But what if that's not the whole picture? What if rhetoric is actually something much bigger? One of the most powerful tools we humans have ever invented for shaping our reality. Yeah, let's dig into that.
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, we first have to tackle that big myth head-on, this idea of empty rhetoric. Okay, so look at this. This really gets to the heart of the misunderstanding. On one side, you have what we think it is today. Insincere talk, empty words, all sizzle and no steak. But on the other side, that's what it really is. The art of persuasion, the study of influence. Simply, effective communication. See, it was never supposed to be empty. It was designed to be powerful.
So, how in the world did we get from this powerful, foundational art form to just empty talk? To figure that out, we've got to go way back, like way, way back. So where did this whole art of persuasion thing even start?
And you might be picturing, I don't know, some philosopher in a toga sitting under a tree, but you'd be wrong. Believe it or not, the story of rhetoric starts with a total crisis, a huge land dispute in ancient Syracuse over in Sicily.
Okay, so try to picture this. A brutal tyrant has just been kicked out. Great news, right? Well, yes and no. It created total chaos. Everybody rushed to the courts to try and get back the land that was stolen from them. But here's the catch. There were no professional lawyers. None. So if you wanted your land back, you had to stand up and argue your own case. All of a sudden, being a persuasive speaker wasn't just a nice skill to have. It was the only way to get your life and your property back. And out of that desperate, real-world need, the formal study of rhetoric was born.
And that's where we get this core definition. At its heart, rhetoric is the art of effective communication, specifically for persuading people in public. It was a direct answer to a critical question. How do we use our words to create justice and bring order out of chaos?
But here's the thing. As soon as this incredibly powerful tool was unleashed, a massive fight broke out among the smartest people in ancient Greece. I'm not kidding. It was basically a battle for the soul of communication itself.
And in this corner, you had three main groups. First, you had the sophists. These were traveling teachers, and their big thing was that excellence, including persuasion, could be taught to anyone for a price. Then you had the heavyweight philosopher Plato. He was really not a fan. He believed in one absolute truth, and he was convinced rhetoric was just a dangerous trick that could make lies sound true. And finally, you have Plato's own student, Aristotle, who kind of tried to play peacemaker, saying, hey, maybe it's just a neutral toolkit.
And yeah, Plato did not pull any punches. He had this famous analogy where he compared rhetoric to cooking. He said it's all about making things look and taste good, but it offers zero real nourishment for the soul. To him, it was just superficial fluff.
But then there was his star student, Aristotle. He saw things completely differently. He wasn't so hung up on how it could be misused. Instead, he got practical. He basically said, okay, let's stop arguing about it and just figure out how this thing actually works.
And what he came up with was a toolkit so brilliant, we are literally still using it thousands of years later. He broke it down into three key appeals. First, logos. That's the appeal to logic, your facts and reasoning. Then, ethos. That's about your credibility, your character. Why should anyone listen to you? And finally, pathos, the appeal to emotion. For Aristotle, the magic wasn't in using just one. A truly persuasive message had to weave all three together.
And this framework? It was so revolutionary it couldn't be contained in ancient Greece. It spread everywhere. So let's do a quick fast forward through history to see how this one idea changed everything.
Okay, so in ancient Rome, guys like Cicero made rhetoric the absolute cornerstone of law and politics. But then, when Rome became an empire, speaking your mind could get you killed, so rhetoric kind of shrunk down to being just about style. Through the Middle Ages, it mostly hung on in things like preaching and writing formal letters. But then, boom, the Renaissance brings it roaring back to life. Humanists started arguing that language doesn't just describe thought, it creates it. And by the time we get to the Enlightenment, the idea evolves again. Thinkers said persuasion has to appeal to the whole mind, your logic, your emotions, your memory, the whole shebang.
All right, so that was a whirlwind tour of history. But let's get real. Why does any of this ancient stuff matter to you right now? I mean, what's the connection between some guy in a toga and your social media feed?
Well, the study of rhetoric actually had a massive resurgence in the modern era. A big part of it was after World War II, when everyone saw the power of propaganda and got really serious about understanding mass persuasion. Then, as new tech came along, radio, TV, and now the internet, the field had to expand. It wasn't just about speeches anymore, it was about images, ads, and digital content. It finally carved out its own space in academics, and today, its ideas are the engine behind everything from billion-dollar ad campaigns to political revolutions and social movements.
And all of that brings us to the definition that a lot of experts use today. Rhetoric is the study of symbolic action. Now, I know that sounds a little academic and stuffy, but stick with me, because it's actually a really simple and incredibly powerful idea.
So what the heck is symbolic action? It's just a fancy way of saying rhetoric is the study of how we use symbols to get things done. And symbols aren't just words. They're images, logos, memes, sounds, even the clothes we wear. It's how we use all this stuff to build a shared sense of reality, to define who we are, to argue for what we believe in, and to actually make change happen. It's not just talking about the world, it's doing something in the world.
And that brings everything full circle, right back to you. Because rhetoric isn't just for politicians or ancient philosophers. It's happening every single day. It's in the email you're about to send, the comment you're about to post, the conversation you're about to have. So the question was never really, is rhetoric good or bad? The tool is neutral. The real question is the one we're left with. How will you use your symbols, your words, and your actions to shape the world today?